But coming into this podcast, I kind of had a feeling that a lot of it was going to be centered around Erik Johnson and whether or not he should have a place in the Sabres lineup. After tonight's game, however, I feel like it would just be a waste of time because I think he might have just solidified his spot.
Unfortunately.
Could you believe one goal? He's not going anywhere.
It was a pretty good goal.
It was pretty nice. It was pretty nice.
It was nasty.
Right around $9 million defenseman Seth Jones, no less.
He changed the time back to when he was back with the Avalanche, a younger player, and it was nasty.
To be
Game-winning
fair,
goal.
To be fair, Seth Jones should not be making nearly that much money.
Well, in any case, he did win the Sabres 2 points. Whether or not it actually was deserved or not, they come away with 2 points. And for the first time in a few weeks, JP, you are back with us to discuss this. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's nice to be back.
I don't like this at all. I like the two-man pod.
Well, screw me then.
We had a good thing
He
going.
interjected himself.
I didn't interject myself. Christian went on a hiatus, and I had to step in.
I left for 2 episodes last season.
It was
and
like a
JP
month and a
decided to
half.
Scoot on in.
Yeah.
It was not that. Was it that long? Was I gone that long?
You tell
It
me.
was a little
I
bit.
cannot remember.
It was at least a few weeks.
It was a decent margin. So, in any case, welcome back to another episode of the Sabre Roundtable. My name is Jonah,
I'm Christian.
JP.
and in this week's edition, we will be talking to you about just a lovely week in Sabres hockey, just the best week.
Calaposo's 1,000th game.
Yeah, what a great story.
Congrats to him. He played a great game.
The rest
The
of the
rest
team?
of
The rest of the team, I
Not
don't know.
really.
Not really.
Oh, man.
The Sabres go
1 and 2.
The Sabres go 1 and 2, but man, it feels a lot worse than that, to say the least.
The narrative has not changed with Boston at all. Again, we jinxed them.
Yeah,
I
you have to
jinxed
stop
them.
calling them out, both of you.
I jinxed them. And you know what? Well, the thing is, it's like when we call them out, we kind of make notice of it. It's like we're like, oh, every year it's like we say they're gonna fall off. Maybe this is the year. Nope, it's not.
I think every time we say that, they grow 2 times as strong.
And how they have no center depth. How are they? They're not as good as they were last year, but they're still a top team in the league.
Goaltending,
Yeah, I was
man.
going to say 2 of the best goaltenders in the league. I
Whatever.
think they're both in top 10 in goals saved above expected.
Well, yeah. I think I saw a stat where when the Sabres won on New Year's against the Bruins last year, since then against Boston, they've been outscored 19-3 or something.
Jeez.
Which is ludicrous. But I do remember that they were blown out a few games. So again, just
Is that supposed to justify it?
it,
It's okay, we're blowouts, they don't count.
it doesn't justify it at all. But it's like, at least it wasn't over a longer stretch of games. But it's still really bad. But yeah, great way to celebrate your captain's 1,000th game played in the league by just getting walked on.
You could just tell 3 minutes into the game once they got scored on that it was going to be a bad game.
Oh, they got cooked. It was not pretty to watch. I was turning it on and off. For the first time in a long time, I muted Twitter notifications. I muted all my text notifications. I muted my Snap and Instagram notifications, everything.
Welcome to my world, man.
Everything.
I love to block out the world during a Sabres game.
But I've never done that before. That was the first time I'd ever I've put do not disturb on, but maybe that's because I was doing other things like schoolwork. But I've never gone to the point where I went into the app and shut notifications off for all of those.
Misery and isolation is a powerful drug, man. You get used to it.
Yeah.
I do it a lot.
It's
Tell
a
me about
dangerous drug.
Don't want to slip too far down that rabbit hole.
That's what Sabres hockey will do to you.
Well, as someone that was in that building, it was, well, I guess to start things off, we can talk about, it was yet again another good ceremony put on by the Sabres. I unfortunately did not make it to the arena in time to view it, but from everything I saw, very nicely done by the organization once again, and it continues a trend that we've seen over the past few years where games like these, they have made it seemed more and more special, and it makes it feel like the game is on a higher level of importance, which the players kind of
They usually do ride the coattails off that.
They usually do, but they did not do that
Not
that night.
this game. Not this game. They do love a good group picture though. I like that.
They
Like
do.
I don't think I've ever seen a ceremonial puck drop where the whole team comes out and they take a group picture.
Right when I saw the ceremony and, the two captains went up with Okposo, and then Eric Johnson was the other. I was like, oh, yep, that
There he
sounds
is.
about right. There's
There
our
he
other leader on the
is.
team that's not going to ever get benched. What is the next ceremony going to be? Is it going to be Jeff Skinner 1,000 games?
He's coming up. I know Johnson's close too. I would have to check who's closer. But
See, I think we said this last year. Like, when's the next ceremony we're going to have? And then we had Okposo. Then we'll probably have Skinner and Johnson.
Skinner and Johnson, yeah. Jeff Skinner, 1,000 games.
And no playoff
Without
games.
a playoff game.
That's sad. He deserves it.
Is-
I feel bad. Well, actually, you know what? I don't feel bad. Because I said before this, when we were just watching the games, I said, I'll never feel bad for a professional sports player because they're doing what everyone's always wanted to do. So
Show a
I
little
feel-
sympathy.
I
will
feel
ya?
bad, yet I also don't feel bad at the same time. But he should be in a playoff game. He'd be electric.
He got traded away from the Hurricanes. Now they're one of the team's best teams.
As soon as they were getting good.
Yes, and he got traded to the Sabres in their worst decade stretch in the franchise's history. So
I've always thought that Carolina, I think they still regret trading him.
They didn't get anything for him.
They didn't get anything for him. Well, they got Cliff Poo.
What is he doing?
I think he's like,
Where is he?
Could not
no
tell
joke,
you.
I think he's like actually in China.
Could not tell you.
I will figure this out.
But,
I thought I saw that he was playing overseas.
well, if we want to get into the Boston game, I feel like we should talk about probably the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst of the things that happened that night. Tage Thompson will be missing some significant time for the Sabres.
Yep.
Gets cut open by Charlie McAvoy with his skate, goes to the locker room, comes back stitched up, goes back out there, heads on to the PK. Charlie McAvoy, once again, is the aggressor here as he shoots a puck into Tage Thompson's wrist. That would do it for him that night, and that is going to do it for him for the foreseeable future. Don Granato says that Tage will be missing some significant time. But he did say he thinks it's less than 2 months. So I guess we'll see him in April.
With the Sabres, they say that it might be the whole season.
Yeah.
Like,
Man.
just what we needed.
It was.
But just when your team is exuding no offense, your best player offensively gets hurt. That's exactly what we needed.
It's not only that. It's just really. I feel like this point as a fan, it's just cruel to watch. Like when I saw that first injury, I thought he tore his Achilles. I thought he popped something because he couldn't skate off the ice. So the whole rest of the first period, we're freaking out, thinking like, oh, we're gonna have to play the rest of the season without Tage, and then he comes back onto the ice, and it's a huge sigh of relief for everyone. We could all take a deep breath, and we're like, thank God he's back. And then, in the most Sabres hockey fashion of all time, he takes a shot off the wrist in a fluky PK situation, and then that's it. And then it's back to the same. Like it's like a kick in the nuts. It's frustrating. This is the life we chose, though.
Yeah, that's just the Buffalo sports life.
You know, their forward depth is supposed to be one of their strengths. It's supposed to be. So surviving 2 months without Tage Thompson should not end your season. Shouldn't.
It'll certainly test the depth.
People
People need to step up. Cousins, he's been all right this season. Everybody knows that he needs to step up. Mitz is gonna have to take a lot of Tage's responsibilities. So everybody just needs to step up a little now.
I think it's also it's definitely a lot different last year because they never saw an injury like this. Like, yeah, Samuelson saw some time out, and Tage was playing injured by the end of the year. But for the most part, like their big guns were healthy for the entire season.
Not Tage. Dahlin was fighting it a lot of the season.
They were fighting it, but they were all fighting through it. Like you didn't have this type
That's
of
true.
injury, obviously. You know, it's a good test. It's if the season's already clearly on the downswing, if they really want to get themselves back into a race, then got to climb yourselves back out of this hole.
Yeah, I mean, they were battling the injuries before the season started with Jack Quinn. So, I really think once both of those guys are back, it could get interesting, especially if they're still hanging around, which I expect them to be. But yeah, it's not great when your number one center goes down with a fluke wrist injury, like right at the beginning of the season. I guess technically the beginning of the season, but yeah, not fun.
I mean, any team in the NHL, if they're losing 2 of their top 6 forwards, they're gonna be hurting. So it's tough.
You could even say 3. I mean, Tuck didn't play the immediate game after, so you're missing Tage, Tuck, and Quinn all at one point.
Yeah, I don't know. We just need to get through these next probably 2 month and a half at least without both of them, and hopefully we're in a decent enough spot where they can return in the lineup, and we could turn the season around. But it's not looking like that at all. It's not trending.
Spoken like a true fairy tale.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna come back, and it's just gonna be so much fun.
Yes,
it's gonna be perfect.
We'll be players are always great off injuries.
Yes. Yeah. Certainly haven't had any of those debates.
Us in Buffalo know that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's shift over to the goaltending. Let's talk about Devon Levi. So here we are. What are we? Close to 20 games into the season, and it hasn't been the start I think they would have wanted for him. Evolving Hockey has him at negative .58 goal save above expected. His save percentage is .880 right now. And there have obviously been nights that he has not helped them win. There's been good performances sprinkled in there. He stole them 2 points against Minnesota. But for the most, honestly, I would say for the most part, he has looked a bit overmatched. And the Boston game definitely reflected that. He got pulled in the second period. So the question does have to be asked. Do they consider sending him down at all?
I don't know. I mean, I think if you want the easiest solution and not carrying 3 goalies, it would be to send him down right now because, honestly, UPL's been playing really good. Comrie, for the most part, has been pretty good. I think it is the easy solution, and if he goes down there, he could play 3 out of 4 games. We could play 4 to 5 games every 5 games, and I mean, right now he's not going to get that many games here. So even if you want to fight through the inconsistencies he's going to have, you can't make the argument that he should be starting over UPL right now at the very least. And so it's tough. I think I want to say the conversation should be being had, but at the end of the day, he's a young player. He's going to go through this. We all knew he was going to go through this. We said going into the season that at some point Levi is going to go through it. He's going to have some rookie struggles. And, I mean, he certainly is. One night he'll be great. Another night he'll be not so good. So, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, it's also got to be tough from his perspective. He had all this pressure going on him, to overcome these other 2 goalies. The whole fan base thought he was going to be the savior this year, and he just hasn't lived up to it yet. So, I just hope his confidence is at least still there, and he could just, he'll fight back. He's probably going to get at least another start before they ever consider him going down.
My honest opinion is if they haven't sent down a goalie at this point yet, I feel like they just continue to roll with the 3 goalie rotation unless they get desperate. Let's say some injury. Let's say the injuries start to pile up. Then I guess I could see them sending a goalie down. But I think the main reason they started with the 3 goalie rotation is because they had confidence in all 3 of these guys, and they had a really tough decision to make, and they didn't want to make that decision by sending someone down. And at this point, they've put themselves in a tough situation because they've shown that they want Levi to be their number 1. I mean, he's gotten the starters net more often than not in practice. And if you send him down now, what message are you sending to the organization and the fan base and all that. It's like
even him, like you came into the season, you were the guy.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
You've kind of you haven't done enough.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that statement. That's why I'm saying it's just what are you gonna do? I really don't think that's the guy you want to send down. But I mean, again, you get desperate enough, sure. But let's say UPL has one of his classic meltdowns, or Comrie's hurt again, or he doesn't, live up to the hype. But it's just more questions. There's been no answered questions on the goaltending front on this team since the last time we've discussed it, because players that we thought were playing poorly flipped, and now the players we thought were playing good are now playing poorly in a goaltending situation.
I think it speaks volumes to a lot of the points that were being raised over the offseason. Like, yeah, it is kind of hard for a 21-year-old goaltender to carry the brunt of the starting load in the best hockey league on the planet. Those people for those that were making arguments in favor of that argument, it wasn't unfounded.
We were those people.
I mean, yeah, we raised the concern. We recognize that this is not something that goalies do. And, it's no indictment of Levi's career outlook. But for right now he doesn't look confident. He's not I think he's quickly learning that this is not the NCAA, as good as that league is. And when push comes to shove here, Zach Benson should be sticking around. Ryan Johnson should be sticking around. Yuri Kulik and Isaac Roseanne, I think, should be getting looks. And look, Patrick Kane might be a Buffalo Sabre. And for any of those things for a combination of those things to happen, a few guys are going to have to get sent down. And whether that's Bryson being waived or Victor Olofsson being traded, an easier solution is to waive the waiver eligible guy for a little bit. And I don't think they're to that point yet. And I don't even think they should be to that point yet. Like I said, Levi stole them a game. He stole them that Minnesota game. So, it's not like he's completely overmatched. He doesn't look like he has no confidence. I haven't seen him in a game where it like at times last year with UPL, it's like, man, this guy's just not. He's all over the place. He's looking behind him when he's saving pucks. He has no confidence. With Levi, it just feels like he's a bit overmatched at points right now, and it's something he just has to navigate himself. This is the learning season for him.
The growing pains of a young goaltender.
I think for now they're going to continue to roll with him. I mean, they spent this whole off season basically putting the burden, whether it was in good faith or not, the burden of this season was going to be on his shoulders. And so far, the other options are stepping up. Luukkonen has been legitimately good, which is awesome. And Comrie, when he has been good as well, even against, that third goal against Winnipeg was a bit frustrating, but for the most part, their goaltending has been good. It has not been the issue. And even that, Levi hasn't sunk the team. He's just been a bit below average, and those concerns about a young goaltender such as him are a bit concerning.
It is kind of crazy how the Wild game, he was like 3.5 goals saved above expected, and the Boston game completely netted that out because that's how bad he played. But the one thing that is crazy to think about, and I still see people making arguments for this, is that, Levi's not playing good. This is why we should have got a veteran goalie to play opposite of him. Our other two goalies have been good. Like, we didn't need I still don't think we need to go and get someone with how they've been playing.
Well, I fall into that trap too, where it's kind of like when Levi has a bad game, like, they should have just gone and got a veteran goalie. But then, you got to take the next step. Okay, who should they have gotten?
Exactly.
Are you going to sign Tristan Jarry for 5 years? Are you going to sign Jonas Korpisalo for 5 years? You weren't signing Connor Hellebuck to an 8x8. Even then, you would have had to trade for him in the first place. Carolina re-signed Frederick Anderson and Antti Ranta. And look, of course, it's in. And I'm not saying there's nothing Adams could have done, but anything he could have done, it would have required probably extra effort. It would have come across as desperate. He wouldn't have had the leverage.
Would have had to overpay, probably.
Yeah, more likely than not. And it's not, if it was a pretty stacked free agent class and, if he had to pay extra in terms of dollar amount, that's fine. But if he's having to pay 5+ years for goalies that aren't even genuinely good, Jonas Korpisalo and Tristan Jarry have their own world of problems each. And those were like the two best options in free agency. So, yeah, in a perfect world, he would have gone out and gotten a veteran goalie to pair with Levi. But he didn't. And like JP said, Comrie and Luukkonen have been more than okay. The goaltending, honestly, might be the least of their worries right now.
And the crazy thing is that once again, this season is proving that goalies are voodoo. Let's look at the top 10 of goals saved above expected. Number 1, Thatcher Demko. 2, John Gibson, who has been awful the last few years. Cam Talbot. I mean, come on. Jordan Binghamton he's come back and he's very good.
Jordan Binghamton.
Jonathan Quick is
Binnington.
9th. Like, it makes no sense. Jonathan Quick and Cam Talbot are both coming out of retirement, basically, and playing good. Like, this is crazy. Goalies are just, it's insane. It makes no sense.
It's a crapshoot every year.
Even Peter Mrazek on the Blackhawks. He had, like a 920 save percentage going into this game?
Yeah, until
the
tonight.
Blackhawks are awful.
Eric Johnson had something to say about that save percentage.
Like,
buddy.
even Peter Mrazek, 15th. He's playing on the second worst team in the league other than the Sharks, and he's 15th in goals saved above expected. It's crazy. They make no sense. Goalies make no sense.
Little off topic, but is Jack Campbell still in the AHL?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's on the struggle bus down there.
Oh, boy.
Remember when people want to sign him?
I was thinking about that when he got sent down. He was the off-season favorite that we wanted to add as like our next goalie. That would have been
funny.
That would have been something. Okay. Before we jump off the Boston game, I do want to give a quick shout-out. Victor Olofsson did get off the goal-scoring schneid. If you're ever in doubt, if your team is ever down 5 or more goals, there is no one that you ever want to look to more than Victor Olofsson.
Multi-goal game.
It's unbelievable, dude.
And
It's
neither were empty
crazy.
netters. They were both in
Snipes,
regulation.
goal
Yeah.
scores goals, really.
They were good goals. It's crazy.
I'm glad he did it just in time for your return.
It does fit. It does fit. He's been all right this year. He has not been awful, but it doesn't mean he's been good.
That's probably the nicest thing you've ever said about him.
Okay. Before we jump off to really these last 2 games, which I think you can kind of put together, considering it was a mini road trip for the team, I was thinking this after the Boston game. A 5-2 loss at home, in your own building, on your captain's 1,000th game. Your star player goes down with a long-term injury, and your team falls to, what was it? They fell under 500 again, and once again, the offense no-showed, and it felt very hopeless. And I had this question: was that the lowest point in the Adams era since the 18-game losing streak?
I would definitely say so. Like, even last year, like our 8-game losing streak, like, didn't have too many expectations. Those games were all close.
They were all close, and if you look at it, it was all like their goaltending was awful during that stretch. And like you said, like there's no expectations, and it didn't feel hopeless either, Like Tage Thompson was still shooting at like 30% throughout that whole thing.
This is definitely the lowest point. And a little Bill shout. The Bills had probably the lowest point in the McDermott era, other than 13 seconds, of course, on the Sunday night. And then we go into the Sabres, and we're at the lowest point of the Sabres. Being in Buffalo sports sports fan is just torture.
Wrong podcast, buddy. It was a really, really, really rough 24 hours. Like, extremely bad. Like, I questioned watching sports again
I did too.
for a while.
It was the lowest. Oh my god.
Like,
But once again, it was kind of deja vu. It's like, you know what? I've been here before, you know?
Yeah.
That's why I thought that. I'm like, I have felt this same feeling before. And it wasn't too long ago.
I still think that 8-game losing streak was probably a lower point than this Boston game. Like, if you think about it, like, obviously the expectations are greater this season, but you have to build up the expectations in general. So, I mean, I guess you can make the argument they'll let you down more, so I get what you're saying, but an 8-game losing streak's an 8-game losing streak. Like, that was like, if you imagine having an 8-game losing streak now, that's 100% worse because of the expectations. But still, I think the 8-game losing streak last season outweighs whatever expectations we had this year, just because we're off to a slow start.
Yeah, you can make that argument. It is still crazy thinking the next lowest point that we're all arguing about is when we had an 18-game losing streak.
Yeah, that was
like, come on.
Okay. So, talking about these past two games, because given that they're now without Tage Thompson and Zach Benson's back in the lineup, Comrie also comes off IR. I think you can kind of collectively look at these two games as a kind of test run as to what we're going to see over the next month and a half or so, or however long Tage Thompson's out. And I guess I'll just open the floor. Like, these last two games, the first two games without Tage Thompson, collectively, what are your impressions?
I mean, obviously losing your number one center it's a big loss, but I feel like I've just been seeing more of the same as I've seen all season. It's just the offense isn't there. The defense is okay. Like, Tage, don't get me wrong, he's a really important part of this team. But before Tage went out, like, he wasn't he wasn't the Tage Thompson we've seen just burying the puck every night. He was he was hitting a little bit of a rough patch, but his defensive play improved because of that. And if obviously you're sacrificing a little bit of offense when you go more towards your defensive game, but since he's gone out, I really haven't seen much of any change as to what I've already seen. It's just the offense looks sluggish every night. They can't score off transition like they did last season. Teams have adjusted to that. And then when the Sabres try and come back and adjust to that by dumping the puck in, the whatever system they're running, if it's a 1-2-2 or whatever it is, it's like they're not getting guys down there quick enough. They got one guy in there and it's immediately broken back out. They get caught on a change. They get caught on an odd man rush, something. It's just, I feel like the puck possession is a big one too. It's just with that comes a lack of possession time, and you just get caught running around. It just looked like sloppy hockey every single game I've watched.
I think that's fair. I think it has been more of the same. It's just, I think it's even more emphasized now because you're missing your best player, second best player on the team other than Dahlin. So, I don't know. It's what Christian said. It's been more of the same. I will say I think Dahlin has stepped up with Tage out. I think he's been playing very good.
He's been a monster these past two games.
Yeah, he's stepped up, and we've needed that. And I mean, it's just more of the same. Our power play still stinks, even though we somehow scored tonight. So
while you've been gone, you've missed a lot of power play discourse on here.
Yes, you
I
have.
know
A lot of discourse.
I know.
It's been, oh man,
we jinxed it tonight though. It was good.
We did jinx it.
We were going into that power play that we had tonight with 10.2%, and I was like, we're gonna be under 10% after this one, and then we scored, but. I don't know. Just more of the same. I think Christian pretty much hit on the mark. Other than I thought Tage was fine before that. I don't think he was really going that much of a dry streak.
They kind of suckered me in during the Winnipeg game because that game, by all accounts, they dominated Winnipeg, at least from the second period onwards, and probably deserved a better result. Didn't get it. But, tonight it was just very sluggish. They didn't dominate Chicago by all accounts, but I think, taking a step back, they dominate Winnipeg, and they're sluggish against Chicago. Can you maybe tell me what the what the denominator might be during all that. What changed from Winnipeg to Chicago?
11-7.
They went 11-7 against Chicago, and in my opinion, I think it was pretty noticeable. We talked a bit about it last episode, but I despise 11-7. I really don't like it. And for a team that's looking for answers, especially on the offensive side, it ruins chemistry. You know, you're going out there, one shift, Casey Middlestad's out there with Jeff Skinner and Alex Tuck. Another shift, he's out there with Kyle Poso and Zemgus Girgensons. I mean, it's whiplash for a bunch of these guys. And I think it doesn't help, especially when you're on a road trip and you're already dealing with a huge change. Tage Thompson's injury already puts a big rift in the top of the lineup, and it's a big trickle down effect. And then you're doing that, because as we'll get into, you're doing it essentially because you don't want to scratch a defenseman, and I think you're hurting the team. And yes, I know some of you might be thinking, well, Tyson Jost was dealing with general soreness, because that's what Granato said, and I believe he was, but I don't think. I think it was a bit convenient, is all I'm saying.
I think this game highlights my probably biggest issue with the Sabres this year, other than maybe their power play. And this is mainly on Donnie and the coaching staff. There has been no consistency in the lines all year.
No.
All year. And, how are you going to be more consistent as a team and string together some good games and some wins if the lines are changing every damn game, every damn period? Especially if in 11-7, you literally almost never have the same line. There's one shift, I forget who it was, but it was 3 players that you'd never think would ever play together, and they were out there together. And it's just, you can't get consistent if you're switching the lines up all the time. It's frustrating, and it makes no sense. Get some lines together, keep them together, build some chemistry. If it doesn't work after a few games, then sure, you can switch it. But just because they had a few bad shifts doesn't mean you need to change it up. It's just, that's something that's really frustrated me this year. I think even in last year, Donnie would let these lines ride out longer than they should have. Think about Middlestat, Olofsson, and who was it, Jost in the beginning of the year. Before Middlestat turned into Middlestat mode, that line was awful. But they stayed together for the longest time. And now I just feel like it's a complete opposite. They have a few bad shifts, and all of a sudden, let's switch it up. Let's switch up the lines. Let's switch up everything. And it's frustrating. I don't get the logic behind it.
Yeah, if you're running 11-7, it's only a matter of time before a defenseman accidentally goes out there and plays center. But yeah, cohesion is an extremely important part of a hockey team, and if you're changing lines that often, it means you have a lack of confidence in your players, and you have a lack of confidence in yourself, because if you're the coach, you're the one who's making these lines, and I get switching it up every now and then is good, but if you're doing it this much, you might have to look somewhere else to find your issues, to solve your issues.
It's just overthinking it. I think that's all it is.
No, yeah, I think it is overthinking it. I think you're way overthinking it. I also think it's also a matter of, not wanting to make a tough decision. There's the elephant in the room here is there's 3 to 4 guys on this roster that could be replaced by guys that deserve to have looks, which is Isaac Rozan and Yuri Kulik. Both of those guys deserve to have looks on this team. And let's say they go out and Patrick Kane's on the team, which honestly, we've said before, it's probably a matter of when and not if at this point. If you have those 3 guys coming into the roster, it's a no-brainer that you take Olofsson out of the lineup. Jost is definitely a guy that's just going to be rotating in, and then Girgensons and Oposo are also going to be scratches every other, rotating scratches, and they'll probably have reduced minutes. We were saying before the game, the Chicago game, because that's when we're recording this after, We were saying before the game, at least I was saying, with Girgensons and Oposo, the big benefit of having them back on the team this year was what they brought defensively to this unit. The defensive side of the puck is still there, but the offensive side has gotten so bad that the pros don't outweigh the cons anymore. Like the offense is gone. There's nothing there. So I really don't see the benefit of having them in the lineup anymore when you could have a guy in Rochester who could play probably worse defense but also bring a lot more to this team offensively, and it's also something they need.
And Okposo, he's just clearly lost a step. Like, you could see it. I know this has been discussed too.
He hit the aging curve.
But, yeah, he's hit that. But I think the most surprising thing about this whole discourse is that Girgensons is still, like, a decently, he's like 28. Like, it's not like he's 35 like Okposo. Like, and he's been very good for us, for the last few years as a fourth line grinder, really good defensively, really good forechecker. But that's the most surprising thing to me is that he has not been good this year, which is I would have never guessed. Like, going into this offseason, I could have obviously heard the argument that Okposo, we probably shouldn't have signed him because of his age. But Girgensons, like, there's almost no reason not to bring him back. And he's been rough. Both of them obviously have been rough, but he's that surprised me the most.
You just have roadblocks in your forward core. Like if you want one of these guys on the team, like, you should be giving these AHL guys looks, and then these should be guys that should be rotating in and out of the lineup. I don't understand what the thought process is there, but Donnie has some really difficult decisions to make as of, probably going forward from now on with a team that's hovering around 500 and the offense is still nowhere where it needs to be, especially with the talent you have. What you could see it if you're a good hockey coach, and I know Don Granato is a good hockey coach. You could see which guys aren't benefiting you offensively, and as long as your team defense is solid, you can make it very a methodical change. You could bring one guy up, he rotates in, see how it goes. Maybe make some lines that are, they stick for a few games, see how that goes. But constantly rotating and churning these lines with the same guys that, are weighing down the top point producers, especially when you're running an 11-7, it's not good for this team, and it's not going to take you anywhere.
Let's get to the defense. So I would say the forward talk is a bit of a primer, but this is really the meat of the conversation. There is a glaring fork in the road up ahead where you probably are not going to be able to keep doing this 11-7. I think it's hurting the team. I think that playing like you saw a perfect example against Chicago. The Blackhawks played last night, and they traveled, and then they had to play the next night. Whereas the Sabres played Friday night, had a day off, had almost 48 hours off, and they were the rested ones coming into this building against a team that has been the worst team in the league aside from San Jose or St. Louis. And it was essentially a toss-up as to which way it could have gone. I don't think it's a coincidence that it had that happened while we were running 11-7. And it all comes from the fact that they are afraid to scratch a defenseman. Because they know. They see what Ryan Johnson is doing. Ryan Johnson has been awesome with the Sabres. Ever since he's been called up, he's taken this opportunity and ran with it. The third period against Chicago, he was running with Dahlin for the most part because it's gotten to a point, all right, I think the Sabres definitely cater to some of their older and more respected players a bit, but they're not idiots. Ryan Johnson has found his way with Rasmus Dahlin at points. And, this coaching staff has recognized the same thing with Zach Benson. I think they're going to keep him here. They should. However, with this Ryan Johnson emergence, that is, you're going to have to make a tough decision here. I know it stinks because here are your options, all right? You're not scratching Rasmus Dahlin. You're not scratching Mattias Samuelsson. You're not scratching Henri Jokiharju. He's been good this season. You're not scratching Owen Power, even though I know there's a subsection of fans that would like to see that happen. And, you really can't scratch Ryan Johnson at this point. If you scratch Ryan Johnson, it ultimately comes down to they're catering to their older players or players that they're catering to Eric Johnson because everybody sees that he does not deserve a spot in the nightly lineup over someone like Ryan Johnson. And so it basically comes down to you scratch Connor Clifton or you scratch Eric Johnson. And unfortunately, Eric Johnson just scored, honestly, maybe the Sabres' goal of the season so far. Because, when he picked up that puck, I think the last thing I ever expected him to do was exactly what he did.
Let's go short side, top shelf.
That was awesome.
Peter Mrazek.
With Seth Jones defending him.
Jesus, man. It's just
it's
so
never
funny.
Easy, right?
Because he's not coming out of the lineup now. He's not.
You can't. Honestly, you can't. You really can't. It's just such a. It was a clutch moment. It was a big time goal. It was a sick goal. You really can't scratch him for the next game. And at the bottom of the Sabres in ice time as well was Connor Clifton. And I think
he might be the odd man out here.
I think for now that's who they might scratch.
Which is a shame because you're paying him $3.33 for the next 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely not what you wanted coming into the season.
No.
And I still don't think it's deserved.
No, it's not.
No.
It should be Eric Johnson coming out of the lineup. But I don't have any faith in this coaching staff making it, a decision, a tough decision that benefits the team. Because I haven't seen it yet.
Clifton has not been good with Eric Johnson, just like no one's been good with Eric Johnson just about. And Clifton, I think when he's been away from Eric Johnson, has actually been all right. I think they are going to scratch him, especially with how the third period went. I don't know if I really saw Clifton out there at all. And I think it kind of makes sense, but I don't think it's the right move. And, I was just saying how, the forward lines have been all over the place. The defensive pairs have been together pretty much the whole year. And you can make the argument that 2 of the 3 pairs have not been working. Dahlin and Samuelsson have not been good together this year. And obviously Clifton and Johnson have not been good this year. Yet they've stuck together pretty much the whole time.
I cannot stand the fact that they played some of their best hockey with different pairs. While Samuelsson was out for a little bit, that they were finally forced to switch up the pairs, and it was working. Power and Clifton in their short stint were great. Dahlin and Ryan Johnson, when they played together, they were great.
Dahlin and Yoki have been pretty good together.
I really don't see what they're seeing. I feel like it's noticeable that Dahlin and Samuelsson haven't been good. I don't know. They one of those goals against Chicago tonight, they're just totally off sync. Samuelsson didn't pick up his guy. Dahlin really didn't challenge Bedard. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it works. And I feel like you have the depth now. We talked about this last episode, but you have the depth now. If your top 6 is Dahlin, Power, Samuelsson, Jokiharju, Johnson, and Clifton, that is probably the best Sabres D-core it's in a long time. I mean, probably since the last time they made the playoffs, and honestly, it might be better than that. You might be talking about since 06-07 with the star power that they have in Darlene and Power. And I just don't think there's any reason you need a top. There's no reason you need to be so top heavy with the top pair, in my opinion. And it's just time. It's time to make the big boy decision. The Toronto Maple Leafs were the laughingstock of the league for the first 3 weeks of the season. Everybody was making fun of Ryan Reeves. Everybody was making fun of John Klingberg. And guess what? They scratched both of them. And now they're red hot. They swept the Sweden trip. And it's kind of the same situation. A 1-year pending UFA defenseman and a guy you just signed to a 3-year deal. And I get it. Like, and that team brought in someone like Ryan Reeves to save their locker room, essentially. And they scratched him because they just couldn't justify it anymore. And I'm nervous that a large part of that was just because of all the crowd noise, and that a smaller market like the Sabres, it might not be as much pressure for them to cut ties with someone that's so well respected, like Eric Johnson. And I don't mean cut ties as in trade or waive him. Just keep him as your 7th defenseman. That's all I ask. There's no reason for the amount of loyalty they're seemingly willing to show him. And I know he's going to play next game, and I'll say it again. Like, I think after that SportsCenter top 10 goal he buried tonight, I think it's deserved. You know, you do that, you deserve a spot in the lineup. But it's a trend that he's not a positive contributor, and he's especially not one that would deserve to keep a spot in the lineup over someone like Ryan Johnson.
If they send Ryan Johnson down, they're unserious. Like, that would be atrocious.
No, yeah, I completely agree. You don't do that. I mean, honestly, I don't know what this team will do, but yeah, that's something you cannot do that at this point. He's shown too many flashes of greatness. But I mean, same thing kind of in like in a different way. Like, the same thing goes for your forward core. It's just you have guys ready to make an impact, and there's a lack of depth right now at your forward core with the injuries. And you have these guys ready, and you just can't make the big boy decision to sit your captain for a night, or you sit one of your guys that's been around for 10 years. And I get the loyalty thing, and of course I think they should be loyal to these guys. These guys have stuck around for a long time, but you got to look at what's better for the overall benefit of the team. Do you want to just keep spinning your tires if you're an organization and keep making the same mistakes but keep up your loyalty? Like, what is that? It's frustrating. It's really frustrating sometimes to watch. But I don't know. Who am I to talk? I mean, I don't know. I'm just a podcast host.
All right. Do we want to talk maybe wider NHL for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
We can start with the most notable news, I guess, of the day, at least. Patrick Laine, who is being paid $8.7 million by the Columbus Blue Jackets, was a healthy scratch.
Not a good look. Making that much in your healthy scratch. Has he just not been scoring this year?
3 points in 9 games.
Oh. How many of those
and he was
goals?
Benched. Him and Johnny Gaudreau were both benched last game.
Really?
Or was it, I believe, 2 games ago.
What's going on?
With 5 minutes to
crazy.
go.
What's going on in Columbus?
Gaudreau, Laine, and Kent Johnson.
They're all benched or scratched?
Ken Johnson's in the AHL.
Yeah.
Oh,
Probably,
my God.
I don't know their team that much, but probably 3 of their most skilled players are not playing at all. That's crazy.
Oh.
On a bad team too. It's
Talk about a team that I think could use someone like Don Granato. And then that's not it. We should fire Granato. Don't want that to be spun that way. But I think that team could definitely use some soul searching, and not the greatest look that
No.
you're scratching your $8.7 million winger.
And they're at the bottom of the East right now, right?
Yep. Yes, they are.
That team stinks.
And they tried the old Tage method with Line A too. They tried throwing him at center, trying to replicate that.
Did it work? No.
He's not Tage, man. He's not Tage.
No one is
not a
Tage.
unicorn.
Nobody is Tage. Okay, if we want to talk about, let's talk about something a bit funny. I don't know why this happened, but the Seattle Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights Winter Classic jerseys were leaked, and not like your typical Fanatics. Somebody spots it on their website really quickly, or somebody spots it out in public at a retail store. Well, first of all, the Seattle Kraken's jerseys seemingly were leaked by the Utah Jazz. The players wore them into the arena, and so that was weird. And not even 24 hours later, AEW, or All Elite Wrestling, they leaked the Vegas jersey as well. Two of their on-air personalities were wearing. Well, one was wearing the Vegas version, and the other was wearing the Seattle Kraken's version. What? Why? Why did it like? Why like this? Like, is this the weirdest jersey rollout of all time?
Why the Utah Jazz?
Where's the connection
Isn't
there?
it in Utah? Is that why? Am I wrong?
Why would it be in
I
Utah?
saw some. No, the game.
No, it's in T-Mobile Park. It's where the Mariners play.
Yeah.
It's in Seattle.
Yeah.
But it's not even like why Utah? Why not OKC? Like the Supersonics moved to Oklahoma City. Like that would be more of like, you're paying homage to a team that you don't have anymore. But Portland is closer. Why Utah?
This is definitely the NHL's way of thinking they're going to expand their audience to get it to other sports, I guess. But no one recognizes those two jerseys.
Nobody
Like,
knew.
Even like, if you were an NHL fan, you'd recognize the Kraken jersey because it was still their logo.
Well,
The Vegas jersey.
well, at least with
you
the
have no idea.
at least with the Kraken jersey, it says Kraken on it.
Yeah.
The Vegas jersey looks awful. It looks so
I guess
bad.
Let's go into it. What are our thoughts on the jersey?
It's
That's
like that's the
crazy.
first time I'm seeing it, and that is really bad. Like a big V with just gold and white trim.
I saw what they were going for with kind of like the
Like
kind of looks.
old-timey.
It looks stitched on. But it looks so like I think the logo's fine.
It looks Victorian.
I think
era.
both of their logos are actually fine, but the Krakens are just stripes, which I'm guessing is a reference to, or I'm guessing it's an homage to the Seattle
Metros.
Metropolitans from all the way back in the 1920s. But Vegas is just like a blank slate. It's just a blank jersey template. Like those look like Flyers jerseys, but with gold.
Yeah, it's not good.
And I don't get the
It's
point of
not
this
good.
rollout. All Elite Wrestling. Where's the connection there?
Is it like was AEW in Vegas that night?
That's a
Or
good question.
Was it? I mean,
It
AEW.
was at. I think it was at one of their events. I can look up the location.
Obviously, with wrestling, it's like you have a flair for theatrics, and that's what Vegas is about. But again, I'm failing to see where the connection between these organizations are.
Like, you know what? Honestly, it might be one thing if, they announced the jerseys and then they were giving it out to people to wear places. But this is how they leaked it. Like, the NHL first audience didn't even see this first. Like, other audiences did that don't care about these jerseys.
Well, and the thing is everybody thought maybe the Jazz one was like a mistake. Like, NBA players like to show off their style walking into an arena. And I don't know, maybe they just got their hands on these jerseys somehow. But the fact that, two on-air hosts for AEW were just wearing them in the middle of the broadcast, this seems very intentional. And I don't...
It's definitely intentional.
I don't get the point. I really don't get it. It's just...
It's confusing. It's a weird marketing. If it is intentional, which I do believe it is, it's a really, really weird way to market the game. And you know what? what was just going on? The Sweden stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, thanks, Bettman. Like I was at work and I was like, wait, why are the Red Wings playing right now? And I texted you guys. I'm like, why is this game going on right now? They're like, oh, they're in Sweden. I'm like, oh, great job as usual, Bettman, with your NHL marketing.
I also really
so bad.
had no
like,
idea.
Nobody, again, the outdoor games, the Heritage Classic games, the winter, like the only one is happening is the Winter Classic game, and that's because it's been traditionally on the 1st of New Year's Day every single year. But the Heritage Classic games, even the Lake Tahoe game, any sort of like special event game, there's no marketing. Even on NHL's Instagram or Twitter, there's no mention of it. Or maybe I'm just like missing every single one of them.
Maybe you're just clueless.
Yeah, maybe that's what the odds are. It's like
maybe
I missed all of them.
Maybe the problem is you.
Maybe
you're
it is.
the problem.
Maybe it is. But if the NHL really wants to get serious about reaching a wider audience, you gotta fire your marketing department and get a new one.
You know, I can only imagine like the boardroom meeting. That all right, guys, we need new ideas. We want this Winter Classic to represent something new because it's the 2 new NHL teams. How do we change up our marketing? And there was one idiot that stood up in that boardroom. What if we leak the jerseys with 2 different brands that have nothing to do with hockey or the teams? And someone approved that. Someone at the highest level. Someone at the highest level of the National Hockey League marketing department. Or maybe not even marketing department, but somebody a higher up signed off on that and said, "Yeah, sure, let these people wear it. And we'll get people talking about it."
We're not talking about it in a good way.
What a mess. All right. I think that will basically wrap this up. I know we asked some of you for some questions. It's kind of late here. We're kind of tired.
Kind of answered some of them.
I think we answered some of them in the process.
I think the only question I saw that's kind of legit is how long will it take for a coaching change? I think they'll write it out with Donnie.
Yeah.
But look, like I said earlier, I was at a very low point with Buffalo Sports Tuesday. I was questioning Donnie. So, I'm starting to question him because his lineup decisions have been very questionable.
Yeah.
But I think you got to give him the benefit of the doubt right now with how he's kind of turned this franchise around. But I think it's a valid discussion.
I mean, for how long, though? I remember going back to when we first hired him because he kind of just replaced Kruger. There was no big coaching search for him. And I remember there were talks. It's like he's going to right the ship, and then he'll probably get to a point where he hits a wall with this group, and then we'll move on and we'll find another coach to get us over the hump. So you never know how quick that could, sneak up on you. But yeah, going back to what we already mentioned in the pod, it's just if he doesn't make these decisions, these decisions are not difficult to make. Casuals like us see him on Twitter. We see the stats, we see the metrics, we see everything. We're just not in the locker room. And you know what? Maybe Donnie sees something else. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's in the position to make the right decision, and I think he will make the right decision. But until I see it, I'll question him too.
I think he knows what the right decision is. It's just whether he's going to make it or not.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think it might have been the Winnipeg game where he supposedly in the locker room, he was yelling at the guys after the second intermission. I think that is something that our guys probably need because, I don't know. Some other people talk about how, we're kind of, soft and, everybody's happy all the time. And I think, if we're trying to become a serious team, a serious contender at some point, we do need some tough love. So I'm sure Donnie does it other times, but it is nice to hear that, he's at least done it once this season when we have been a pretty bad team this year so far. At least we haven't lived up to expectations.
So I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the Sabre Roundtable. Looking ahead here, the Sabres, who are just such a good team in their own building, they will be heading on the road for 5 out of their next 6 games. So if there's any chance to get back in this race, maybe going back on a road trip, getting away from people like us might be better for them. But for this week's schedule, they have Washington on Wednesday, Black Friday game on obviously Friday. That one's at home against Pittsburgh at 6 p.m. And Saturday, they are back in New Jersey for the second time this season. So I'm assuming we'll talk to you guys after that New Jersey game. They play the Rangers on Monday.
Let's win 2 out of 3.
Let's get something going here. Washington's playing well, but I feel like you gotta start winning some games here.
We say it every episode. Let's string some wins
Let's
together.
get something going here. But I think other than that, thank you guys for listening. If you want to follow us on Twitter, follow us at the Sabre Report. Follow us on Instagram at the Sabre Report. Subscribe to us on YouTube, where we are now uploading these pods and different little segments on our main YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok. Get updates for the pod at Sabre Report Pod. And I believe other than that, we will see you guys next time.
Shout out the BST boys and shout out the BST pod. He always shouts us out at the end of his podcast, so I got to give it right back to him.
So with that, we'll catch you guys next time. Feel free to leave a review, and we'll see you guys next time. Go Sabres.
Go Sabres.
Go Sabres.